Welcome everybody to our workshop, Balancing Releasing Physical Stress. And this is part of a series that we have. And we're going to be talking about how to move your body safely and effectively so that it contributes to your health. And many people are curious, why is a chiropractor, aren't they for bad backs and headaches? Why is a chiropractor talking about exercise? And so I want to go over that first and foremost because I want you to get the context of how I'm going to be presenting this information. Chiropractic is based on very simple ideas that the body is self-healing and self-regulating. And we get to do that because we have a nervous system. So if you cut yourself, you're going to heal up. Whether you put the Band-Aid on or not, we're going to heal up. Versus if you cut a dead body, not too much happens. Right, Tom? When was the last time you cut a dead body? Nothing happened, right? All right. And we also are self-regulating, which means that all of our functions are happening with our organs without us having to think about it, without our conscious control. So we're self-healing, we're self-regulating. And again, what system is in charge of allowing us to be self-healing and self-regulating? The nervous system. And so the purpose of the brain and nervous system is to control and coordinate the function of all of the cells, tissues, and organs in the body. And of course that would include our muscles, right? And moving our muscles move our bones. So how we move our body is based on nervous system function. And that then allows us to adapt to our environment. And that's really what health is all about, is adapting to our environment. So if we're exposed to physical stresses that we're not adapting to, we may want to look at the nervous system to see why we're not adapting to those physical stresses. And we're going to look at that. But first, let's just make sure we're all on the same page here. Is there anything that the nervous system does not control? Anything at all? Can you think of anything at all that the nervous system does not control? Anybody? Well, then you're all right, because there is nothing that the nervous system that does not control. We literally are living our lives through our nervous system. Everywhere you can think of where you are, every tissue cell in the body has a range of 3 to 9 nerve fibers going to it. So that's how extensive the nervous system is. So if we start interfering with the nervous system, then we're going to start interfering with function. And that interference in the nervous system we call subluxations, or nerve interference. So my job as a chiropractor is to help people to correct subluxations, nerve interference. But also my job is to show you ways to stop recreating them. And so it turns out that if we can do that together, correct the damage that's been done, and also show you ways to stop recreating the problems, then you get to feel better, prevent problems in the future, even reverse the effects of aging, and in all, you're going to just have the best life possible. So that's the effect of this care. But here's what the problem is what's causing subluxations. And we know that subluxations are caused by stress. And that can show up in 3 categories: physical stress, mental emotional stress, and biochemical stress. So tonight, we're going to be concentrating on physical stress. Anytime you have any of these stresses that are overloading to the body, it's going to affect the nervous system and cause subluxations. So again, I would only be doing a partial job if all I did was help you to correct the subluxations. The bigger part of my job must include helping you to learn the ways to stop recreating them. And then you get to have the best life possible. And the good news is that even if this is your first in the whole empowerment series that you're learning on how to balance and release physical stress, once you start to address this, it will help you, even without learning anything more, deal with mental emotional stresses and biochemical stresses. So isn't that great news? You just have to do one thing and you're already going to start helping everything. All right, so now let's jump right in and see what exactly is physical stress. How can we define it so we know how to address it? So physical stress can be divided into different categories of looking at it. One would be gross physical stresses, and the other would be micro stresses. So who can tell me some examples of some gross stresses, physical stresses? Any examples?
Trauma.
Yeah, like getting hit by a car, something like that, an accident, exactly. So auto accidents would be an example of that. Other kinds of common traumas that you would know about with your history with...
Broken leg, dislocated shoulder.
From
sports injuries.
Sports injuries, exactly. Those are the two top causes or most obvious causes of gross trauma would be auto accidents and sports injuries. And what else would be in that category? Repetitive motions. And that would fall in the category of more of the micro traumas, right? When we think of people that get carpal tunnel trouble from using their mouse too much, we've all heard of that, right? Or just repetitive injuries, we call them. But I want you to think about this a little bit more in depth so we can uncover what's going on in these situations. So let's say that you are an athlete and you were playing your sport, you were training properly over and over again. What's going to happen is you're going to get faster and faster, more and more accurate, more and more efficient, stronger and stronger. By repeating something over and over in a living system, we would expect it to get more efficient and better at it. And so as athletes, they know that that is one of the laws of nature, is that when you practice something over and over, you're going to get better and better, more and more efficient, stronger and stronger, faster and faster, right? So then let me ask you something. If using the mouse is not an injury, if that isn't an injury, then why would doing it over and over again become an injury? Shouldn't we get faster and faster, better and better, stronger and stronger at this if we're doing it over and over again?
Wrong type of movement.
Wrong type of movement. What makes something the wrong kind of movement?
Something that stresses.
Something that's stressing you. Exactly. You nailed it. If our nervous system is getting clear communication back and forth, we will become aware of when something is stressing us, and our brain will say, do something to change that. So if you're doing something and the muscle's getting fatigued, you're going to get a signal that says, stop that. Give it a rest. Do something different. The problem comes up when we override the subtle cues that our body's giving us, and then what happens? Do you ever have the experience of a little kid saying, Mama, 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 Mama? Right? If they don't pay attention at first, what happens? They have to talk louder, right? And so if we're not paying attention to the subtle cue, we're going to have to get a bigger cue if we're going to pay attention to it. What do you think pain is? It's a bigger cue. It's something that's got to get your attention. So the first part of this equation, though, is that we're not taking in the subtle cues. Now, whether that's because we have demand on us and we're not paying attention to our body, or whether we're feeling it but we still feel like we have to keep going and we're overriding it consciously, it can be either of those, and usually it's a combination of both. When we're in a stressful state, we tend to not pay attention to our bodies because we're looking for where that tiger is out there that we better watch out for. So we tend to be externally focused when we're stressed, and we tend to be internally focused when we're not stressed, when we're in a state of safety. So we can oftentimes find that repetitive motion injuries are happening with people that are already under stress. And one of the parts that happens when we're under stress is we get the subluxations, the nerve interference. Well, if you're getting nerve interference in the nerve supply to your hand, you're already diminishing the amount of accurate information that the brain is getting about that area. And so that can also contribute to repetitive injuries. Do you see? So we can't just say that repeating something over and over automatically is going to cause damage. Because there are lots of people that do that mouse thing all day long and don't get carpal tunnel, aren't there? And have I had people that come in to see me and I adjust their spine and then they go back and they're doing the same thing again and again and now it's not a problem anymore? Yeah, lots of times. So it turns out that it's not about the stress itself, it's whether or not your body can adapt to it. And we've already learned what system allows us to adapt to our environment. It's the nervous system. And so adaptation is all about perceiving a stress and then responding appropriately to that stress. Okay, so good information, isn't it? Good to have this newer perspective on physical stresses, because some people just think everybody that uses the mouse is going to have that trouble, and it's not based on the mouse. It's not the little mouse's fault, right? It's what's happening in your own body. Okay, so that's the repetitive motions. What else? Exercise itself, if not done properly, can actually cause injuries. How many people have I met that are afraid to exercise, afraid they're going to do it wrong because in the past they've gotten hurt by it? How many people have I met that, were making great recovery, and then they come in and they say, oh, I had a setback. And I said, what happened? They said, I went and did yoga. Right? And we think, well, yoga's supposed to help. So what happened there? Something that should help, in some cases, seemed to get worse. So again, we want to look at what are the factors behind things like that. And exercise, when done properly, will help you strengthen and get more resilient and more adaptive. It actually will help your nervous system. What we want to teach you tonight is the safe and effective ways to be doing that. Ergonomics, that oftentimes goes with the repetitive injury things. Who knows what ergonomics is? Anybody?
Well, part of it is the correct setup for when you're working at your desk, or good body mechanics when you're moving or lifting, or...
It's exactly what it is, yeah. So ergonomics is just about moving your body in a healthy way when you're working. So any kind of work that you're doing it with optimum biomechanics. Exactly. So whether it's lifting something heavy, lifting it properly, or sitting at your desk and using the mouse, all of that is ergonomics. So if we have improper workstation setups, that sets us up for stress much faster than it should happen. And then if we don't do anything to address that, we ignore it and override it, that's when we start to get the injuries. Now, what's the biggest cause of physical stress? It turns out it's none of those things. It's sedentary lifestyle. That turns out to be the biggest stress that we have. So a lot of our talk actually is going to be about this factor. And there's so much research that's out there now that's telling us about the harm of a sedentary lifestyle. In fact, now they're finding, I'm going to mention it now because it actually is a new piece of information that I don't even have in my talk as part of the lecture, but it's that standing multiple times during the day is essential. It's not about sitting too long, it's about sitting too long without pausing to stand. So you could add up a lot of sitting, but if you have a lot of standing in between, you actually do much better than if you have a shorter amount of sitting that you never interrupt. So that's going to be important information for us as we go on, especially with the research of what it's showing us now. There's one other thing that I'll add in here as far as physical stresses go, and it's called electromagnetic stress. And I simply put it in there because it is a stress that we're exposed to that we're not necessarily addressing very well in our culture. But it's a stress that's not going to be going away, and it's new to our physiology. It's only in the last, 10, 20 years that we've actually had the amounts that we have, and it's just going up. So there's pretty much nowhere on the planet that you can go now and not have some electromagnetic stress coming from computers and satellite dishes and all of those kinds of things. So definitely something to be aware of. All right, so now let's do a little bit of a stress test here and ask ourselves the question, how many hours a day are you in front of a TV or computer? And the reason why that's an important question is what the research tells us about that. The research tells us that recreational time, that means not working, but recreational time spent in front of a TV, a computer, or a video, if it is equal to or greater than 4 hours per day, it increases all cases of death by 48%. Isn't that astounding? What could that have to do with all cases of death? There's another figure here which says that if it's greater than or equal to 2 hours a day, it will increase cardiovascular death by 125%. Now that makes sense, but how come if you double that to 4 hours, it actually increases all cases of death by 48%? Isn't that amazing? And what is happening in our culture, right? So just check this out. Where is it that we start, as far as sedentary lifestyle goes, right? Where is it that we start the sitting, not habit, but I guess ritual or theme in our culture? What age do you think the sitting thing starts? It starts going, let's say our nature is to move, right? If you think of primal man, we didn't have chairs, right? That's a more recent invention in the last, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, whatever, but in the millions of years on the planet, right? When we look at that length of time, sitting is not actually a natural thing for us to do a lot of, right? Squatting, maybe a little of, right? But sitting, not so much. But when is it in our culture that we already get indoctrinated to just be sitting even if our body wants to move? When does it start? School, right. So little kids that want to move around, want to move their bodies, right? No, they're taught to sit and behave, right, and pay attention and conform. So schools is where it starts. But what we're finding is the research tells us that sitting stops the brain from being stimulated. That means and also, of course, what's the posture that we see equated with sitting in school? Especially more and more and more stooped posture. So sitting in school promotes stooped posture, which actually restricts respiration, and then you don't get as much oxygen to the brain. So there are a number of factors of why it slows down or stops the brain from being stimulated, but that's one of them. Where's the next place where we end up sitting a lot in our lifetime as we go through a span of a life? So school, work, right? Work's the next time that we tend to sit quite a bit. How about when we're getting to and from school or to and from work? Car, commuting, we're sitting, aren't we? Even though we're moving, we're sitting, right? Whether it's in the car or on a train or a bus, sitting. So commuting is a big part of sitting. And then we have our day at school, we have our day at work, and we come home, and for recreation, what are we doing? Sitting, right? Recreation in front of a computer screen, sitting. So what the research is telling us is it's not a good idea to spend your recreational time in front of a computer, a video, or a TV, because it actually increases the all causes of death. And what we know now is today, 20% of U.S. adults have no physical activity at all. Pretty much means they get up, walk around their house, walk into the garage, into the car, drive to work, walk to their job, sit, and then reverse that and have no physical activity. That's 1 in 5, right? That's big. Physiology that was meant to move. All right, and how much daylight exposure are you getting daily? That actually is another factor of being active, is being outside and getting daylight. Another question about physical stress, how much fresh outdoor air are you getting daily? Okay, it's starting to get a little cold here in Vermont, and people are starting to kind of move indoors and huddle down. But getting that fresh outdoor air is an important part, and without that, that becomes a stress to us. How often do you break a sweat? That's important. And I have people that a big light bulb went off for them because they said, I'm very active, I do yoga, I do this, I do that. But it turns out that they weren't actually doing exercise. They thought they exercised a lot, but they realized that they actually hadn't broken a sweat in years. And so that was a big light bulb that went off for them. So breaking a sweat is an important part of doing proper physical exercise if you're going to get all the benefits from it. And then, are you receiving any kind of body work, whether it's chiropractic, reflexology, massage? So those factors can really go a long way in dealing with physical stress. And if you're not having any of that kind of work, chances are you may be piling on the physical stress. All right, and so motion is life. And what does the research tell us about the importance of motion? This is my favorite study of all time. This study was conducted on patients who were placed in cervical collars. Actually, I want to go back one here. I went by one. Here it is. So Dr. Roger Sperry is a Nobel Peace Prize winner in brain research. And in 1981, he told us that 90% of the stimulation and nutrition to the brain comes from movement of the spine. Wow! So just like a windmill generating electricity to our brain, the juice to our brain is coming from movement of the spine. We all know this is true. How many people have had the experience of having to sit in a lecture, right? A little bit too long, and you're getting tireder and tireder because you're sitting there too long. And yet if we got up and expended energy, all of a sudden, even through using energy, we get more energy from that, right? And so we know that the stimulation and nutrition to the brain, the most impact is coming from movement of the spine. Okay, now let's look back at our sedentary lifestyle. What's happening? We're losing that input to the brain, starting with kids in classrooms. That's one of the pieces that's important about learning how stimulation to the brain happens, and that comes from movement, and specifically movement of the spine. Motion is life. So this is a great study, because what they found is they put patients in cervical collars. Everybody know what a cervical collar is, right? You've all seen folks in those, right? And in 4 weeks of wearing a cervical collar, their brains shrank by 20%. Holy cow, right? I remember seeing this guy in town that oftentimes he'd have that collar on, and I'd tell him, not a good idea. He didn't listen, but a few times a year, there he was with that collar on, right? And the studies are now showing us that the brain shrinks by 20% in just a month. Wow. And the good news, though, is that the brain is responsive. It's living tissue. And it turns out that if you actually get movement again in the spine, that the brain will grow back. Yeah, it will reverse that shrinkage. So unrestricted spinal motion is key for brain health and vitality. That is the key. And just think about it. If you had an elbow that lost some of its motion, any doctor would say, let's do something to restore that motion. But when you go and say, oh, my spine's a little stiff, I'm not quite as flexible as I was before, what do they say? Oh, well, aging, right? Right? They're not doing anything specifically. We got to make sure that we take that rust out of there, right? And yet the research tells us that that's one of the most important areas to have the flexibility. All right, and so we also know that when we think about brain function, stimulation to the brain, right? Think about that the brain needs food, needs glucose, right? It needs that, or actually other sources of energy, we'll say. It also needs oxygen, doesn't it? Right? Oxygen is key. Stop that oxygen, brain dies pretty quickly, right? But it also needs what's called proprioception. And proprioception is the input, the stimulus that's coming from the body. Every joint in our body has receptor sites that when that joint is stimulated or moved, it will send a message up to the different parts of the brain, different joints, different parts of the brain, and that will then stimulate that part of the brain. So the receptor sites are the key areas in the joints that are part of that stimulation for the brain. Well, where is it that we have the most concentrated joints in the body? It's in the spine. Every spinal segment has 4 joints to it. And when you think of the flow of messages going back and forth between the brain and the body, the closest you get to the brain with the most concentration is all in the spine. So movement of the spine is key. All right, and so when we have those receptors firing, then we're getting that stimulation to the brain. But, what happens if we don't stimulate? We don't have those receptors firing, and the brain isn't getting stimulated. It's almost like a generator that's wearing down, wearing down, wearing down. And so then the brain kind of gets that worn down aspect of not as much energy, more deadened or weakened, like the rheostats where the light bulbs get turned down dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. That's kind of what happens when we're not getting that full stimulation to the brain. And again, the great news is that we can reverse that. So if we do stimulate the brain, we can increase the blood flow and the oxygen, and that can literally regenerate and rewire the brain. Isn't that amazing information that we actually have that? It's called neuroplasticity in the brain. And they have research now where they find that exercise will increase IQ, mental clarity, and memory, that it turns the stress switch off in the brain. So if we're in a stress state, literally it will turn that stress switch off, and it will stimulate the feel-good hormones in our body. When you think of someone that goes for a run and they get that athletic rush, or it's the endorphin rush they call it. So the endorphins, the enkephalins, serotonin, the neuropeptides, all of these are actually antidepressants is what they are, natural hormones that we create. Now, they did a study, and they had a group of people that all had depression as a concern. Part of that group they had doing exercise, Another part of that group, they had taking antidepressant medication. Another part of that group, they had doing both of those things. Which group do you think had the best results? And what they did is they had 30 minutes of brisk walking 3 times a week for 6 weeks. That was the exercise group, and then the exercise and medication group had the same thing, plus medication, and then, of course, just the medication group. Which group do you think had the best results?
Exercise only.
Absolutely. The exercise-only group had the best results. Which group do you think had the worst results?
Medication only.
The medication-only group had the worst results. What does that tell us then? The group that had the exercise and the medication, what does that tell us? They didn't do as well as the people that had just the exercise. What does that tell us?
Let the body do its own thing without drugs.
Yeah, because what was the drug doing?
Depressing.
It was robbing them of improvement. Do you see that? Are you tracking me? I'm getting blank faces, right? The group that had just exercise did the best. The group that did exercise and medication didn't do as well as the group with just exercise. Are you tracking that, right? So watch very carefully about those kinds of things, because it's huge amounts of information that we're not necessarily getting those reports when we need to. So that's what I'm here to do, is give you what the research is showing us so you can make your best choices for yourself. So that's important information for us. When we're stressed, it's kind of like being stuck in first gear. We're in a stress state. Can you imagine driving from here, up to Williston, take the interstate, right? And never take your car out of first gear, right? What is going to happen? You're going to burn that, right? You're going to burn that system out, aren't you? Yeah, right? So when you exercise, it's like downshifting into second gear. And then you exercise more, and you make it more part of your lifestyle, and now you're taking stress and you're downshifting to third gear. And the more that you incorporate it in your life, the more you're downshifting until you're into, just that cruising along in fifth gear, right, with the most efficiency, least amount of effort. Yeah. So exercise does that for us as well. It turns that stress switch off in the brain. And when we decrease the stress hormones in our body that are flooding our system, that helps us to regulate our blood sugar better also. So they find that exercise helps you to regulate your blood sugar as well. That's great news, isn't it? All right. So what does physical activity do? We're going to summarize it here. It balances brain chemistries and emotions. It improves memory and learning. It turns off the stress switch in the brain. It regulates blood sugar. And it also enhances detoxification. How does it do that? What did we say one of the important things about exercise was? That some people think they're exercising, but then they check in, they realize they're not necessarily breaking a sweat, right? So sweating is going to be key. And so why is sweating important for our health? What happens when we sweat? What are we getting rid of?
Toxins.
That's right. That's one of our prime ways of releasing toxins. What's another way that we release toxins? What organs are in charge of detoxing?
Kidneys.
Liver, kidneys, that's right. And the kidneys, it takes the blood and detoxes the blood, right? And then the bowels detoxify from what the liver dumps into them, right? Now there's another important detox system. If we think about what happens when we are breathing, exhaling gets rid of toxins. Right? So we breathe in oxygen, that oxygen circulates through the blood, and then we trade off with the cells oxygen for carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide is a toxin that we need to, it's a byproduct, we want to get rid of that. So that gets dumped back into the blood system, and it comes up the veins, up into the lungs, and then we dump the carbon dioxide into the lungs and breathe it out. So if we're breathing a lot, instead of just shallow, sedentary breathing, if we're really taking deep breaths, we're going to be not only pumping the blood around our system more to get more out of the cells, but we're also going to be breathing it out. So lung respiration is one of our ways of detoxing. And then also the pumping of the blood through the cardiovascular system, when we're really working hard, that helps to flush the cardiovascular system. So people that are concerned about cardiovascular disease, building up of stuff in the arteries, it's great to actually do a really strong pumping of the heart periodically to flush out the cardiovascular system. That helps out the cardiovascular system. And the one other thing that we want to include is the heart is what's pumping the blood around. There's another system in the body for detoxing, that's the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system gets all the sludge out of our body from the cells and in between the cells, dumps it into the lymphatic system, and we have lymph vessels that run around our body just like we have blood vessels. But the lymph vessels don't have a pump that regulates the rhythm of movement through the body the way the heart does. So how is it that lymphatic fluid moves through the body?
Muscle contraction.
And why is it that muscle contraction is the way that it moves around? It's because it has valves. So the lymph vessels have valves that push the fluid in one direction. So if you squeeze on something, the fluid's going to go either way. But if you have a valve that stops it from going backwards, you squeeze it, it's only going to move forward. So the lymphatic system has valves in it. And it is indeed the muscle contractions that squeeze it, and then it pushes it along. So our lymphatic system, if it doesn't get muscular exercise, then it gets very sludgy. And all those toxins get all built up in the lymphatic system. And of course, we know lymphatic is important as part of the immune system as well, right? Swollen lymph glands, we've heard of that, right? And so for our immune system, it's important for us to be detoxing. Now, what are some of the benefits of endurance exercise? Endurance exercise would be things like aerobic activity, cardiovascular activity. This study showed us that the aerobic activity of walking has a dramatic effect on reducing colon cancer, the third most common cancer that we have, colon cancer. And it reduced it by the risk of by up to 50% among the people that had the highest activity levels when compared to people that were just sedentary. So we know that stress causes the immune system to be depressed, so we're more susceptible to bugs in the immune system, and so that's how we can see the link, why exercise would actually help reduce cancer, because of how it affects the cortisol levels, the stress hormones in our body, and how exercise helps us to flush our immune system and our lymphatic system as well. And did you know that in a healthy immune system function, every day we will be destroying 10,000 cancer cells. That's normal function to destroy 10,000 cancer cells a day, unless you're stressed. And when you're in stress mode, your body stops doing that. So when you exercise, you turn that stress switch off. Doesn't that sound like a good idea, right? So you see, what my job is with this workshop is to not tell you what you should be doing, because we all know we're supposed to be exercising. Why aren't we doing it? Usually it's because something else is getting in the way, and it's only getting in the way because we haven't prioritized the exercise high enough. So my job tonight is to help you move it up on your priority list. So if you knew from the research, it shows us that exercise helps all these things, now you're going to start to think, oh, I guess it is more important than I thought. Okay, I'm going to do it now, right? So that's what my job is. All right. Some of the other benefits of walking, this was another study that showed that women that were diagnosed with gallbladder disease actually had a reduction in the need for surgical intervention by 20%. So that was a nice study to show that relationship. Another one showed, in this study, it was over 16 years, that study right there was 60,000 women that were 40 years old. So it's a huge study, very significant in the sizes of the study and the results that we showed. But another study showed over 16 years, 84,000 nurses were followed. And they found that the ones that exercised...
I'm in that study.
You're in that study?
Harvard nurses study.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Right on. Cool. And I know you exercise a lot. So you were part of the findings that showed the positive results, I'm sure. And so what they found is that exercise definitely had an effect on the glycemic index, right? Regulating your blood sugar levels. They found through this study, they helped to determine that 91% of type 2 diabetes was lifestyle related. You know, that you could change type 2 diabetes through exercise. And they also found that the ones that were exercising had less hyperlipidemia, like the concerns of fat and lipids in the blood, and they also had lower blood pressure. It was a beautiful study. Yeah, right on. That's exciting. Right here, that's from history in the making. All right, now, do you think that exercise could actually affect your genes? Like your genes, isn't that the thing that are in your cells that you're born with, you're inherited, and nothing you can do about it? You're stuck with the funny nose and the, your body shape, and you look just like your dad, right? All those kinds of things. It turns out that actually exercise can have an impact on our genetic expression. So check this out. Studies have shown that physical activity allows for normal gene expression where we're turning on the longevity genes, but exercise also can turn off the disease-expressing genes. So we may have all those genes present, but based on our environment and our lifestyle, we can turn the bad ones off and turn the good ones on. So just because there's a family history of something, it turns out that epigenetics, the field that looks at how the environment affects how we express our genes, epigenetics tells us that we're not a slave to our genes. So just because there's a history of certain diseases in the family, it doesn't mean you're going to get them unless you're living the same lifestyle that they were living. So if they were sedentary and getting sick, and you're sedentary, well, chances are you may get that too. But if you are living a different lifestyle, you can actually turn the disease-expressing genes off. Wow! Isn't that amazing information? Okay, and so physical activity is one of the things that does that. And this actually said that physical inactivity produces an abnormal gene expression and is a direct causal factor of most chronic health conditions. So exercise is really a key to all of that. And you're not stuck with your parents' genes. Good news. So again, adding to our list, it decreases our cancer risk, it improves immune system function, it decreases our heart attack and stroke risks, and even decreases chronic diseases as well. When you exercise, you sweat, the heart flushes the cardiovascular system, reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease and stroke. Now, what do we need to do to prepare for exercise? Well, remember, it's right about that time of the year to change your tires over. What happens if you don't have a good alignment in your car and you're driving and driving and driving? What's going to happen? Yeah, you're making that motion this way, yeah. Anybody had that experience, right? I learned the hard way when I finally had my own wheels and, off to college, taking care of the car myself, right? And after a while, I'm like, gee, when I go fast, the car's doing this. What's that, Dad? Right? Oh, sounds like you wore down the tires. And of course, the tires got worn down unevenly, didn't they? Because there wasn't a proper alignment. And so what happens to our body if we don't have proper alignment? Your body is no different. You'll have more wear and tear faster if you don't have alignment. So how do we measure alignment? Well, here's one thing you can do. If you take two scales, they have to be the exact same scale, and you step on them, and you stand with equal weight on both feet, looking straight ahead, and then you look down, you should see the same number on each scale, which should be exactly half of what your body weight is on each scale. But if you think you're looking straight ahead, but actually you're not, when you look down at those scales, you're going to see a different number on one scale than the other, and oftentimes you have no awareness of it. And that's because you're not getting clear proprioceptive information. The brain doesn't know exactly where the body is. It's enough to hold you upright. It's got a vague idea, but it may have altered proprioceptive information, and so it may not be actually running the body efficiently and balanced. So we definitely want to be checking that. Another way to check for imbalance or asymmetry in the body is we use a surface EMG. So that's a way of measuring the muscle function along the spine, and we can show are the muscles pulling more on one side than the other when all you're doing is sitting there. If you do have that pull, and then you start to exercise and exercise and exercise the muscles, even if you exercise them equally, if you've got a torque there or distortion there, one side's getting stronger and stronger and stronger, the other side isn't getting there, you may be even exaggerating imbalances that you have. And finally, you can even just look at posture, just doing a posture analysis. So looking at someone, are their shoulders level, or is the one shoulder higher than the other? What about the hips? Is there any rotation in the hips? You're standing looking straight ahead, but there's a rotation. Sometimes I have people just march in place and just stop and put their feet in a comfortable position. And for some people, the comfortable position is with one toe turned out, but they don't actually even feel it. And so we know that means there's probably torquing in the spinal system as well. So you definitely want to have as much symmetry as possible once you start to get into more and more exercise, because you don't want to be exaggerating the distortions that you, or the imbalances that you do have, which can create more wear and tear. Now, the different types of activity would include stretching, flexibility types of exercises like yoga or Pilates, or even just general stretching. Another category is endurance or cardiovascular aerobic exercise. And some examples would be walking, swimming, biking, rowing, elliptical cycling, rebounding. Anybody know what rebounding is? You ever seen the little mini trampolines? Yeah, those are also called rebounders. Yeah, so that's what that is.
Yeah, but with walking, you don't sweat.
It depends. If you walk as fast as you can up a hill, you can break a sweat doing that. Yeah. People that do speed walking, you can do that. In fact, there was one example I heard about where this guy who was grossly obese, and he walked like 8 miles a day. Walked and walked and walked and walked and walked. Same course. Walked and walked and walked, and he wasn't losing any weight. And the person that he was working with said, show me what it's like to walk as fast as you can from this telephone pole to the next telephone pole. The guy could hardly even make it when he had to walk as fast as he could. And so what happened was his body got very efficient at walking that same thing over and over again. But once he started to introduce pushing himself with even just small increments, you better believe he broke a sweat just trying to walk as fast as possible between 2 telephone poles, because his body wasn't used to doing that. So for you, you may not, if your system's more efficient and you're still running distances, that sort of thing, so you may want something different. But for people that are just starting out, you can definitely break a sweat walking. And again, it's all about pushing yourself. You're going to be working against your own level. That's how it works. So that can be considered good endurance. I mean, look at the study, the Framingham study. That was looking at walking with those women. That was part of it, right? All right, and then we see some cross-crawl exercises mentioned here. And specifically, they can stimulate brain function, memory, and IQ. Who knows what a cross-crawl exercise is? Right, cross-crawl, if we think of babies that are moving around, right, they're cross-crawling. When we walk naturally, we're going to have the opposite arm swing with the opposite leg. So that's cross-crawl. So a cross-crawl exercise is anything where you're doing this. So that would be cross-country skiing, right? Or running, or walking, or elliptical, right? Though all those kinds of things are cross-crawl exercises. So if you are doing one of those kinds of exercises, you'll have an added benefit of helping with brain function. And the way that they discovered the importance of the cross-crawl is that they had a study where they looked at Marines, and they looked at them before and after their boot camp. I just learned this from hearing about this study, but it turns out Marines in their boot camp, there's one thing that's very different from the other branches of the services boot camps, which is what? On the ground, on their bellies, crawling, 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 crawling. They do a lot of on the belly crawling, 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 it turns out, in their boot camp. So they had so much more of the cross crawl happening, and they found that between the beginning and end of boot camp, their IQ increased by 32 points. And they attribute it to the cross-crawl aspect of their exercise and their training. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So the cross-crawl is a neat thing to include. And I want to just also mention that with the rebounders, like I want to give you the whole range for people that are feeling like, I don't know if I can exercise at all, how can I start safely, to people that already are exercising, how can they get a better edge. So for people that just need to start out with something that is low impact, the rebounder is a great tool because you don't have the jarring effect that sometimes can be troublesome and injurious to folks that are just starting out. The rebounding, you don't have to catch air. So don't think of it like a big trampoline where you're bouncing up and down. All you need is about this much. You don't need much at all. And so even just doing this for 15 minutes a day, there are tremendous research studies coming out with just doing this on a little rebounder for 15 minutes a day. Significant things on effects on cancer and cancer prevention, because the rebounder actually has the best, greatest benefit to the lymphatic system of any exercise. The rebounder. That's what the research is starting to show. So if you have concerns that you want to be addressing your immune system function and detoxing your body, then adding the rebound in, even though you do other kinds of exercise, is actually going to benefit you more. And by the way, if you go online to look for rebounders, because you're inspired, you want to get one, if you search under mini trampoline, they cost a lot less than if you search for rebounders, even though they're the exact same thing. And you can get them for like $30 or $40. Like they're.
Can you get them locally?
I think you can get them at Kmart or Walmart, I think you can get them locally. They have some very sophisticated ones that actually fold up into quarters. So you have something that's about this big that can fit right in your closet or in your car. And those go for about $300, right? So you can get expensive, highfalutin ones, but you can get just the simple basic ones. I'll tell you what, check yard sales. I often find them at yard sales, yeah. All right, what else? We talked about the cross crawl, and then there's folks that are sedentary. Maybe there's folks that can't really withstand being upright. Look what I found at a yard sale. You're sitting at your desk, right? And you can actually be exercising. It's like a bicycle, right? You can be exercising while you're right at your desk, or watching your favorite show, right? But now you're moving. You could break a sweat doing this, and you're not even off your butt, right? So there's lots of ways to do this. Look what else I found. This was when Borders went out of business. They had these on sale. The price tag is $8, but they were less than that when Borders was going out of business, right? You can get these things, and I'll tell you what, these things are going to be the simplest, safest way to do these. You follow the instructions. They're not going to be telling you how to do things that you might get injured with, right? You just simply go at your own pace. But if somebody's telling me I can't afford to go pay for yoga classes or Pilates classes, you can get this. You can probably get it at the library. I'm sure you could go on Amazon and find something, right? Used, right? I'm sure you'll find it. And if people tell me I don't have time to go do this stuff, get these things. You do them on your own time. Do you see? So don't use those as barriers to getting your exercise in, because there's ways around it. All right, that one I'm going to show you in a minute. Okay, so these are some of the types of endurance exercises. And then we also have strength resistance exercises, like using kettlebells, weight training, Nautilus, curves. They do the weight training aspects. Bands. You can use your own body weight for doing strength training exercises. So a push-up would be an example of a strength or resistance exercise. Doing squats, that would be an example of resistance exercise as well. And so now I'm going to show you, look what else I found at the yard sale, right? You know what this is? Here it is. It is a set of weights, right? You can find all these things very inexpensively, because lots of people buy them, they get all inspired, and then they stop doing them, right? Because they don't know the research. If they knew the research, they'd keep doing them, I'm sure. Anyway, that's what motivates me. All right.
Do you know of any good stretching classes locally?
I can't say that I do. It doesn't mean they aren't there. I think I like Pilates as a stretching approach, because it has some strength training with it, and it's very balanced. And, you can take it at the very basic level, or you can get very sophisticated with it and have a trainer working with you to really, have you go at a fast rate forward. So I like that aspect of it. Yoga actually has some great stretches to it. There's something that you could look at that I have been following. I've been working with it myself, and I do see the fastest progress I've ever seen, and that is something called active isolated stretching. Active isolated stretching. And the concept is that you would stretch something for 2 seconds, no more than 2 seconds, 1, 2, and then you go back through the full opposite range. So if there's some place that you feel like you have some resistance, oh, I can't quite touch my toes, right? Then you go as far as you can for 2 seconds, and then you come back up. And then you go again, 2 seconds, oh, I can go a little further there, and back up. And then you go a little further, oh, I can go a little further there, but you only go for 2 seconds. It turns out that research shows that if you hold a stretch more than 2 seconds, the muscles will start to go against that and try to resist the stretch, so you're being counterproductive. So it's called active isolated stretching. If you feel like that flexibility is a big thing you need to work on, then that would be the fastest way to get the most flexibility and the safest way too. Okay, good question. All right, so now what are some alternatives for walking? Let's say that you have a knee injury, or let's say you've had just come out of surgery, or there's some reason why you can't just get out there and even just walk. It turns out walking in chest-deep swimming pools is very low impact, decompressing, and safe, and you will break a sweat, but you won't know it because you're in the swimming pool. But this is a fantastic way. Yeah, a year or two ago, we actually went to a resort for the first time, and they had one of those lazy rivers that you can just get in the little inner tube and let it carry you along, right? And so my daughter and I were kind of playing, we're lying in it, and all of a sudden we turn a corner, and there we see these 3 older women walking upstream against the current. And so that's what they were doing. They were doing their resistance exercising or their cardiovascular exercising, and in a very low impact way. So that was neat to see that. Recumbent bicycle is another low impact way. So you're actually leaning back as you're pedaling. The pedals are out in front of you, so it's safe for folks. And also if balance is a concern, then this is a safe way to be exercising too. And then there's also the physio ball or even a rocking chair. So remember, movement of the spine is what we really want to get happening. A rocking chair will move the spine. So you could be sitting watching your favorite program. This is the first step you're taking into exercise, right? If you can't pull yourself away from it, just get that rocking chair underneath you and just rock for half an hour. You're going to be increasing the blood flow to the brain, the stimulation to the brain. You get the cardiovascular system going. The lymphatic system will get going. And so that's a great tool. And then we have the physio ball. And so this is another tool. If you don't have a rocking chair, you can use one of these. And so this is great because, it has that kind of low impact on your spine. It's great for your core. Because as you sit on this, if your core is not a little tight, then you're going to fall over. Right? You're going to lose your balance. So your core is always working. And it's better than doing crunches for core strengthening, because crunches you're using one part of the muscle all the time. Whereas with this, you're using all the different parts of the muscle to keep yourself balanced. And then you could just be sitting and bouncing and moving and rocking while you're watching for half an hour. That's going to be great movement for your spine. Some of the best movement for your spine, because again, it's moving all the different parts of it. All right, so doing that for nerve system stimulation is fantastic. All right, and so what I call that, the rocking chair or the physio ball, I call that active sitting. So that's the first step of exercising if you're not doing anything, is active sitting. And if you have the back vitalizer that you're sitting on, which is it's a cushion that you, it's a cushion that you, let me just show you. Let me do it here. Where's the thing? Here it is. Good. So this is a fantastic idea. It actually has a little pillow in it that you blow up with air, a few breaths of air. And when you sit on it, it keeps your spine moving. Can you feel that? It's like sitting on a ball the whole time. But you could carry it on an airplane, you could put it in your car, you could put it on your office chair, and the whole time you're sitting on it, you're actually moving your spine. I think it would be fantastic for kids that have trouble sitting still in school. You put one of these under them, and they're actually gently moving all the time. I think it would be a great tool for that. So this is a wonderful tool to use. You also can use it behind you, and the weight of your body against the back of the chair pushes the air, so it reinforces good curves in the spine too. So it has a lot of versatility. You also can put air in it and use it for core strengthening. You put a little bit more air than what you have in right now, and actually it's like almost standing on a ball there, and so you can use it for improving balance. So it has many different applications. And we have those right here in the office to sell. All right, so where do we exercise? What are the best places to exercise? Exercise should be fun. Ideally, it's going to be outdoors because it's more interesting, and we get the fresh air as well, so that keeps you interested and motivated.
Except when it gets cold.
I know, that's the trouble. However, what we find is if you actually are dressed properly, then you can actually withstand pretty cold temperatures.
Yeah.
I mean, you know that feeling of going out when it's 25 below, but it's sunny, and the air is just so crisp. You know, I think it's neat to just be out there anyway, as long as you're dressed properly. That's the key. Also, sunlight is so important for getting our vitamin D. But remember that this time of the year, from Labor Day to Memorial Day, we're not getting any vitamin D from the sun, even if it's a bright sun. So, because the angle of the sun is too low in the sky. So we still want to be supplementing with our vitamin D if we're not going south for the winter. And outdoor air also turns out to be 2.5 times less carcinogenic than the indoor air. So even though we think, oh, winter, I'm going to go to the gym and exercise, the air is not as good as the outdoor air. All right, and again, being exposed to the benefits of daily sunshine, you get your vitamin D. And adequate vitamin D has been shown to decrease the risk of colon, breast, and ovarian cancer by 50%. So if we have the right amounts of vitamin D, then we can actually go a long way.
What is the right amount?
We want to have the amounts in our bloodstream to be 65 or up. And if we're battling some kind of chronic disease, we want 85 to 100. And as long as you're taking vitamin K2 with the vitamin D, then you don't have any risks of having it up too high. Vitamin K2, yeah.
K2.
Yeah. So
And is it the D3 or
D3.
just okay.
D3 and K2. And we only sell D3 now with the K2 in it. Yeah. So just, you want to have both of those. Yeah. But definitely the idea of the amounts in the blood being 30, that's so you can avoid rickets. But that's not gonna help you with concerns for cancer. If you want that, you want it to be 65 or higher, and that's if you don't have anything you're addressing. And if you're addressing something, 85 to 100. So the researchers say that most people need around 8,000 international units a day to get to that level. In the summer, when you're exposed to sunshine for 20 minutes in the middle of the day, your body makes 20,000 international units. So if your body's designed to have 20,000 international units a day, right, then 8,000 a day may not even be enough. So the best thing to do is, if you haven't been taking any vitamin D, I recommend for a couple of months do about 8,000 a day, then get a blood test and see where your levels are at. And I had someone just today telling me they thought they were taking enough, about 4,000 international units a day, and that was supposed to be more than what was recommended. So sometimes they're only recommending 1,000 or 2,000 a day, right? And they still had too low vitamin D. So it's very important to get that right, the vitamin D. It's worth it. It's worth it getting the blood test, especially getting the blood test around November or so, right? Because then we're going into still darkness, right? You want to have those levels high in November. So that's a good time to check it. And then also getting that fresh air and that daylight, it reinforces the proper sleep and wake rhythms, so we get a deeper, more restorative sleep. Now, anybody that needs to move around, stand up, yeah, feel free to. You don't have to just sit there. Take care of yourselves, okay? Do you want to try the back vitalizer?
Bring the extra ones out.
Do we have another one outside? Yeah, we'll get one for you just to see. Okay. How much do we need to exercise? This is my favorite part, because some people think, I don't have time to be exercising 3 hours a day to get my greatest benefit. I don't even have time for 1 hour a day. Wait till you see what the research tells us. If you're exercising the right way, you'll be surprised at how little you need. First of all, 20 to 30 minutes 3 to 5 times a week is minimum for cardiovascular or endurance exercise. So that's where we kind of want to start from. Get that? We want to start from there. And you want to start by a 5-minute warm-up and some just light stretching. You don't want to go too strong with the stretching in the beginning. And then you want to do your 20 minutes or so of exercise that's aerobic type of exercise. And then you're going to cool down with another 5 minutes, and that's when you would do more of your moderate stretching because the muscles are all warmed up. Now, when you're doing your active sitting, you actually can go do this too. You can kind of start out a little bit, and then you can do a little intenser, and then a little less, and a little more intense, and a little bit less. So you can actually ramp yourself up no matter what level of exercise that you're doing. You can do it with a rebounder as well. You could hold on to the wall or a chair and keep working for 30 minutes, and you can do it this way, and that'll work your core as well. And you can also just sit on the physio ball for those 30 minutes and work it as well. So you can start out pretty slow. The very most effective way to use your 20 minutes, though, is something called interval training. Another word for it is peak 8 training, or sprint 8 is another word too. So what you do is you start by warming up, and then whatever exercise you're doing, you want to sprint as fast as you can for 30 seconds. And what's going to happen is the first 15 seconds, you're going to use up all of the oxygen that you have that's just freely moving around. And then you're going to go into oxygen deprivation, or where your cells now are going to be looking for more oxygen. And so that will increase your heart to pump more blood to get more oxygen around. And so the second 15 seconds of that 30 seconds, you're going to feel like, I can't go anymore. But it's the most important time to push yourself to keep going just for those last 15 seconds. So you sprint for 30 seconds really hard, and then you do what's called active rest, meaning you're still moving, but you're not really pushing it at all. And you do that for 90 seconds. And then you do the sprint again for 30 seconds. And then you do the active rest for 90 seconds. So I want to give you an example of what that might look like, even with walking. Okay? So you're going to start. Why don't you get over there? Yeah. You're going to start, and you're doing your kind of regular kind of walk, right? You might do a little bit of an increased pace to warm up to walk, but then you're doing your walk, and then it's time to sprint. You keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Right? You're going to keep going, 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 keep going. Right? 15 seconds. Now I'm going to keep going, keep going, keep going. You see what I'm saying? You can actually break a sweat even in that 30 seconds. You're going to start. Everything's going to start flushing. When you're done the 30 seconds, okay, now you're going to keep going. Yeah. Now this time though, it's just active rest. You're just moving around. Just keep your body moving. Okay. You get that 90 seconds of rest, and then what are you going to do? Go, 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 go. Only 30 seconds, though. You have to really sprint it. And then you get that 90 seconds of rest. Okay? So what I'm going to recommend is that you choose the sport that you like. I like kayaking. I like cross-country skiing. I like running. I like skipping, right? You choose the sport that you like. Maybe it's just walking to start with, and you do it that way. Now, this is an example. See, I'm a little out of breath, even though I'm not moving that much. That's the oxygen debt needing to be replaced. So I used up the 15 seconds worth, and then I kept going. And now my body needs to breathe more to get that in. And what will happen is it'll ramp up your heart rate. So even after you're done the sprinting part, your heart rate will continue to go up, even though you're in your active rest part. That's where the magic's happening. And then what that does is it triggers your cells. Your cells are saying, whoa, we need to create more energy now. And so the rest of the day, your cells are increasing their metabolism. And this interval training exercise where you're really pushing yourself for those 30-second intervals, you only do this 3 times a week. And don't do it 2 days in a row, because you want your body to have that rest and restorative time. So you can still exercise other times. You're just not going to push it to the max the way you will with this. And let's do our math here. How much really hard work are we talking about here? What's 30 seconds times 8? 4 minutes. we're talking about 4 minutes, 3 times a week. That's 12 minutes a week of working hard. Within a week of doing this, people are coming back and telling me they're noticing a huge difference. They're noticing getting trimmer. They're noticing more energy. They're sleeping better, right? I promise you, you try this for a week and tell me what you notice, because it's huge, the change that can happen. And what are we talking about? We're talking about, 20 minutes. We're talking about 3 times a week, right? Just set your alarm clock 20 minutes early. Get up and just do it. If there's no other time, it's going to happen. And it'll be so worth it, because it's going to give you the 20 minutes of less sleep you have, you're going to gain so much more energy from that, from doing the exercise. So I am such a fan of interval training. I'm such a fan of it and what it can do. I want to give you a couple of cautions about it. If you're thinking running is a thing you want to do, I got really excited the first time I was doing this. It was actually the second time I went out, and what I did is I actually recorded on my my iPhone the timing. So my recording went something like this. Okay, sprint, 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 go, 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 go. I'm looking at a clock as I'm talking into it until 30 seconds was up, and then it's like rest, 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 rest for and that's for 90 seconds, and then go, 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 go. And I was like trying to spur myself to keep going, right? Imagining myself. So what happened was I'm listening, and I'm like, okay, rest, 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 and then I hear go, 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 go. And I actually sprained a muscle because I was so enthusiastic about really sprinting fast. So just be a little cautious with that first push off, that you're not, you don't pull something, okay? But also, I love the excitement about it, of pushing as hard as you can for just that 30 seconds.
They have on your, if people are interested in, if they have an iPhone or something, you download an app that will.
Yeah, I've learned about that they have them now.
So you're not doing what you said, all of a sudden running, it will do a countdown.
Yes, exactly,
Compare
yeah.
you, and you can set it to any thing that you want.
Exactly. And they also have something called interval timers that you can get. Gym Boss Max is one of them, and it's similar to that, yeah. So, very good. Okay, yeah, and then I ended up re-recording it saying, get ready, go. Yeah. Okay. All right, so that's the interval training. And also, if you go on my website to the Meet Dr. Rice, and under that is Wellness Resources, I have a video link to the guy that designed Peak 8, having him narrate somebody go through it. So you can watch someone go through the whole 20 minutes, and he's narrating what's happening to their heart and what's happening to their cells. It's kind of a neat thing to watch. And that's somebody who's on the recumbent bike doing it. All right. And I also have on my website a link to a 7-minute interval training where you're just doing push-ups and crunches and lunges and things like that. You're doing 30 seconds of this and then 10-second rest. 30 seconds of this, 10-second rest. So if you feel like you don't have enough time, you have 7 minutes, right, that you could just knock this out and get it in. And I have people that tell me they notice differences just from adding that. That's the only thing they added. They noticed within a week changes happening. Core getting stronger and things like that. All right, so the benefits of strength and resistance exercise include increased ranges of motion, improved joint function, improved fat metabolism, increased bone density, increased overall strength, and reduced risk of injury, and a more balanced posture. So let's look at this. Why should we do strength and resistance exercise? So a lot of people, they're doing their cardiovascular stuff, but they actually aren't doing the strength training pieces. The reason we want to do this is because when you're working the muscle in a strength training type of movement, that contraction of the muscle is going to tug on the bone. Anytime it's tugging on the bone, it's going to stress the bone, which causes the body to build more bone. So if you have any concerns on bone density, then strength resistance exercise is the best thing to do for that. And it will increase bone density the fastest. We also know that moving the body is what keeps the joints actually limber and loose. But if you're not using a joint, just like if you don't use a hinge, what happens to a hinge if you don't use it?
Squeaks.
It squeaks and it gets rusty, right, from not using it, and that's what happens to our joints too. So using joints will create scar tissue and not using joints will create scar tissue and premature degeneration, but then starting to use them again, well, it can actually make that go away. And it improves the nerve and blood flow, and we can regenerate.
You can make scar tissue go away that way?
It depends on how you're working with it and the nutrients that you have, and there are some indications that it can benefit. I'm not claiming it's going to do that for everything, but it can improve it for sure, yeah. Now, here's the really great information about the strength and resistance training. People want to know, how much of this do I have to do? The research shows that you only have to do 6 weeks a year of strength and resistance training to reduce osteoporosis by 50%. Wow. Now think about it. In January, don't all the athletic clubs have specials for 6 weeks? Where you can go in and do your resistance training for the year? Right? So if you're telling me you can't afford that, right? You can do it at that time of the year and just get it done, right? And of course, if you incorporate it into a regular rhythm, even more benefit. But reducing osteoporosis by 50% in just 6 weeks a year, it's impressive, isn't it? And it's motivating because it means we don't have to do a lot of it. We can get started with it and know we're going to get results. So what else does it do? It increases bone density as well. Now, what about the genetic expression? Do you think strength and resistance exercise could actually affect genetic expression? It turns out that resistance exercise turns on the skeletal muscle tissue genes that will actually increase the transport and elimination of the unhealthy fats in our cells. So it's a way to get the unhealthy fats out from doing the resistance training. And it will improve it by 24%. How fast do you think how much time do you think it'll take? Like, how long do you have to be doing the resistance exercise before you start to see those kinds of results of 24% of eliminating the unhealthy fats from the cells? What do you think? You think a few weeks or a few months? What do you think it'll take for you to get your genes to be working that way?
Well, it says here a single exercise.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
What does that mean, a single
After one single exercise, the genes are turned on doing that. Just doing it one time. You get benefit immediately is what it's saying. And it affects your genetic expression immediately. Isn't that fantastic news? I'm so excited about how these things work. Now, what about resistance training and fat loss? If you really are targeting fat loss and the shape of your body, then the resistance training is the fastest way to shape your body. It builds lean muscle tissue. Muscle actually burns more calories than fat tissue does. So all in all, using the muscle squeezes the toxins out, and eliminating toxins, it gives your body the opportunity to then eliminate the fat that it was storing it in. So for many different reasons, the best way to build healthy tissue and to change the shape of your body is going to be through resistance training. All right, now a couple other pieces for exercise. Fish oil actually activates the enzymes needed to burn fat while exercising. So if you don't have the omega-3 oils, the fish oils, then you won't do as good a job burning the fat if that's one of your target things. We also know that fish oil protects children from obesity and metabolic syndrome, and we even know that the omega-3 actually triggers pre-fat cell death so that those cells will not be there to then then result in too many fat cells as an adult. So very important piece there for kids. So what else does it do? It lowers bad and increases good cholesterol. All right, so if we're going to prepare for resistance exercise, what are the things we need to do? Endurance training is one of the best ways to warm up. So get your cardiovascular piece in. That warms the muscles and joints up. That makes stretching easier. And then it gets the blood and muscles into the joints, the blood into the muscles and joints, and lubricates those joints. And that then will reduce the risk of injuries. With the peak 8, make sure you get the get ready phase, so you're not don't just jump right into it. Have that 1 or 2 seconds of getting ready to do that sprint. What are the types of resistance exercise to do? The kettlebells, the dumbbells, the physio ball. Let me show you the physio ball bit for the resistance exercise. You can do things like, this is great for the core strengthening as well. You kind of make a triangle with your elbows, and if you can go on your knees and do it, you can go up on your toes, kind of like a plank thing, and then you can kind of draw pictures with your elbows. You can do your name, or you can do circles or numbers. And as you're doing it, it's so important that you stay really straight. So you're not going to sag, and you're not going to have your butt up. You're going to just be straight as you do this. And I'll tell you what, you do that for 30 seconds, and you're going to start to feel it. You do it for a minute, that'll be enough for you. You can give yourself a break after that, a couple of days, and you're going to start to feel that tone. So it doesn't take a lot to really see results pretty fast with the strength, with the resistance exercise. So that's the physio ball. Oh, here's another piece that my daughter got excited about. Right, you can actually do balancing with it. Right, you can get on all fours with it, and it's great for your core. Just keep your tummy tight as you're doing it. And then you can, once you do that, you can go to doing it 3. Woo! There you go, and it's great for your balance. And then I can't do it yet, but some say that they can actually do it with 2, but I haven't practiced enough yet. All right. Then we have things like Pilates, again, excellent for that. So again, Pilates is good for the stretching as well as the strength training. You get the Nautilus. Curves is a fantastic organization. They're just doing wonders for women. And then even using resistant bands as well. And don't forget, your own body weight can be the strength training as well. So just doing the squats and doing the push-ups. And if you can't do a push-up on the floor, you can do a push-up just against a wall. And then the more resistance you have, the further away you get. And you can just start doing those wall push-ups. So what's the biggest concern for elderly folks? They're losing their upper body strength, and they're so afraid of falling. Why? Because they don't have the upper body strength to get themselves up. So doing those wall exercises at any age is going to be a benefit. All right, and then proper form and duration. How do we do the strength training exercises? You're going to have sets that you're doing. The research shows, check this out, the research shows that one set is equally as effective as 2 or even 3 set routines for increasing strength. One set, that's all you have to do as long as you do it right. What does it mean to do it right? You need to have repetitions, and the repetitions should range between 8 and 12. That means that if you're struggling and you can hardly do 8, it's too heavy. You want to reduce the weight so that when you're doing it, and then if you can do more than 12, it's too light. So you want to have enough weight so that what you're doing, you range between 8 and 12. Also, you want to do it the full range of motion of the joint. So if you only do a little bit, you're losing the full receptor site potential as well as the full strength of the muscle that's going to be built. You want to also go through the full range at a count of 6 seconds. So 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, right? And so if you do your reps that way, then that's where you're going to get that full benefit. And that means it only takes 1 rep. So how long does it take? You're doing it 6 seconds. What's 6 times 3? What? 1 set, 8 times. What's 6 times 8? Right? 48 seconds, right? That means about a minute of strength training. And you've done your strength training for the day. Right? It's not hard, right? This is how easy it can be. Now, if you're hardcore and you want to go with a personal trainer and do a real workout, go for it. If you're really interested in that, go for it. But if you're feeling like you don't have time, you can't use that excuse anymore. Because the research tells us this is all it takes to get a lot of benefit. So I really want to motivate people that feel like they don't have time for it or that kind of thing. And you do have time for it because you can do it this easily. All right, and so, what would it look like to do a squat, right? You do it slow enough, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006. Slow gets more benefit. And they actually have super slow workouts where you're working so hard because you're going so slow, right? And so you just do 8 of those. You've done your lower body strength training for the day. See? All right, and so again, just to review, we've got the stretching, flexibility, the endurance, and we got the strength training. How often do we need to do it? Check it out. 2 training sessions per week produce 75 to 85% as much strength development as 3. What does that tell you? Only do it 2 times, right? That's all you need to do. All right? And so what is that going to look like? Well, Monday, you go for a 20 to 30-minute walk, but do your interval training with the walk, right? So you get your peak 8 in there. And you follow that by 10 minutes, but really it's not. It's only 1 minute of the lower body resistance exercise. You see that? Then on Wednesday, you do just the walking, again with the interval training, 20 to 30 minutes. And then on Friday, you do the 20 to 30-minute walk with the interval training, followed by the upper body resistance, which we say 10 minutes, but actually it's only 1 minute. Do you see? So that's how simple it can be. Everybody, if they know the value of what they're going to get from this, can make time for this. Especially if you can even do it while you're watching your programs, right? With your physio ball or whatever you need to do there. All right, so let's wrap it up here. Could we ever exercise and get so fit that we'd never have to exercise again? Wrong question, right? Exactly. We just have to exercise. We have to make it part of our regular routine, our regular habits. My daughter sometimes wants to know, could I just brush my teeth really, really good and then not have to brush them again for a while? No, that's not what we do. We have to just do it as a regular routine. Same thing is true for our nutrition. Same thing is true for our dealing with stress. Same thing is true for rest. It just has to be part of our regular routine and habits. And then the last question, could you ever get your nervous system so clear that you'd never have to take care of it again? It's the wrong question again. Do you see? So if people are using chiropractic here when they have aches or pains, that's one way to use it. But if you want to have optimum function and you're looking at exercise and nutrition and stress and rest, what about making sure you have a clear nervous system to make sure you're really optimizing your potential? That's key as well. All right, and so what happens now if you learn all these strategies to deal with and decrease physical stress, but you're subluxated? What if you actually have nerve interference, but nobody's addressing that for you? Well, we know that that can actually have a big impact. And so what kind of impact can it have? I'm going to have you guys actually step right up here to look at this because this is neat. It's a little hard to see from where you are, so I want you to kind of step right up and see it.
I saw it last time.
You saw it last time. Okay, so come on up. This is a video MRI, or actually a functional MRI of the brain. And so you can see all the orange dots that are lit up. That's where the most blood flow in the brain is happening. And that's where the brain is being used. So anywhere that the brain is being used is where we're going to see the orange dots, right? So we can see that this brain is a lot of it's being used. This person was being asked to move their foot up and down and back and forth, up and down and back and forth, like a dance step, right? Something they had to think about. Now this person was subluxated. They had nerve interference. So their brain didn't know exactly what was going on, had a vague idea it could do it, but didn't know if it was really doing it. Can you imagine that, right? This is a person that walks around and everything. That wasn't a handicapped person. This is just someone that was subluxated. They thought they were doing it fine, but the whole brain was lit up to do that activity. Then they were adjusted. And then they went back into the MRI and they did that same movement again. But look, only 2-3 little areas are lit up. So the brain actually is doing very little in order to accomplish the same task. And this part that's lit up, that's the motor cortex for the foot. That's the part that should be working. So this brain gained 2,000% greater efficiency between being subluxated and getting unsubluxated. So when you see something like this, you got to then ask that question, how important is it to keep your nervous system subluxation free? Do you see? And you can imagine if it's just moving your foot back and forth like a dance step, what if you try to now do exercise? In fact, take it to another level. What if you're an athlete that's looking for the most efficiency and the most peak performance? You better have a clear nervous system if you want to have that highest level of performance. I've included here our empowerment series schedule, but it's always on our website as well. And we run these every other month at this point. And so next week we'll be doing the empowerment series for mental emotional stress. The week after that will be for the biochemical stress. I also do these talks out in groups, so if you have any group that would like me to come to speak, I'd be happy to do that as well. And we have other topics as well. And I want to just finish up with a couple of stories. I actually had a woman that came in for care, and she had, her concern when she came in was it was the fall, and she was thinking of the traditional early winter bus trip to the shopping outlets in New Hampshire that she'd like to go on, and she wasn't sure if she was going to be able to endure it. She was concerned that her quality of life, she wouldn't be able to do something she enjoyed, like go on a bus trip to go shopping. So she got under care. Well, short story is that she was able to not only do that, but she had a fantastic time and felt the best she had ever felt. And when she came back from it, within a month after that, under care, she said, I think I'm going to try snowshoeing. Right? That's how significantly her life changed, from being afraid she couldn't endure a bus trip to shop to actually going right into wanting to snowshoe. So just getting the nervous system clear allowed her to even think about actually moving her body more. I also have people that I've worked with that are the other end of the spectrum. Have you ever heard of the Eco Challenge? The Eco Challenge is this intense race where you have a team of folks and they are hiking, navigating, kayaking, swimming through Borneo, right? Through the jungles of Borneo, and they're on a race competing against athletes from other countries and states as well. And so I wanted to support them, and so I actually gave them chiropractic care while they were training. And they had a great little article about their experience with it. But what was neat was that they remarked that as they were doing their training and as their nervous system started to get clearer, they could totally feel how much more efficient their body was working, how they weren't as tired doing the things, that their performance was definitely getting better and better as their nervous system was getting clearer. And these are people that have been training for a long time, and so they definitely noticed when they added the chiropractic care in that a big change happened in their physiology. So that was exciting to hear from them as well. So I wanted to kind of give you those ideas of different ways that people have benefited from the chiropractic care, as well as how it incorporates with their exercise. Okay, now time to take out your homework. So the very last page of your notes, you have, do I have it on here? Yep. You have your homework, and what I did is the top half of this sheet is just check. You just want to look through and you want to choose what's the one, maybe two, but best to just choose one of the easiest things that you could incorporate next to add to your life. And that checklist is kind of all the different things that we talked about. And so you want to just choose the one thing that you're going to do, and then the bottom half of that page is writing out for yourself what are the benefits that you're going to gain, that you're excited about if you actually do this action that you say you want to do. What's the date that you're going to start doing this? What do you need to do to start? So maybe you need to go out and buy that mini tramp, or you need to go get a physio ball, or look at when the yoga classes are. Whatever you need to do, you want to make that, write down what you have to do. Then you want to write down what your check-in or progress date is. That's the date that you're going to think about. You're going to check in. How have I done so far? Maybe it's a week later. Maybe it's a couple weeks later. Am I doing what I said I was going to do? The very last part is the most important, and that's the accountability partner. You want to write down the name of the person that you're going to tell them what you're going to do, and then you're going to tell them that you did it. So their job is not to check up on you. Their job is just to be a witness. And that way, when you set your alarm clock 20 minutes early to get up and do your interval training, and the alarm clock goes off, and you're thinking, no, I think I'll start it tomorrow. And then you think, oh, wait, I told them I was going to do it. Okay, I'll get up and I'll do it. So the accountability partner part of this is huge. It's really what's going to ensure your success. So I strongly recommend that you don't leave that out. What is the thing that most people leave out? It's that part. And the people that don't follow through, usually that's the reason why. So do this, and then 6 weeks from now, put your paper, your homework paper, in a place where you're going to look at it again, because 6 weeks from now you're going to check in to see, how did you do? If you were successful, you're going to look at what's the next thing I'm going to check off on the list and incorporate. If you weren't successful, it's either because you forgot and never started it, so then you just get back on track, or it's because you only did it half-heartedly. You only were able to do it partially. Then you want to decide, do I want to commit to it again and really do it, or do I need to choose something different that I am going to commit to? So you make that choice, and then you do the cycle again. Every 6 weeks you're going to come back to this. And can you imagine a year from now, if you've been checking off these things and incorporating these things into your life, how you could have some huge changes with actually not making huge benefits without making that much change in your life. And that's the way to do it, to have the greatest success. So, any questions from anybody about any of this? Yes?
Yeah, I have a question. When you were talking about the vitamin D and the levels, when you said like 65, 85 and the blood levels, what is it?
Nanoliters.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Great, good question. All right, so otherwise you are now free to go. And I thank you very much for what you've come to hear and the time you spent. I'm going to ask you to do one more thing, and that is to tell someone else what you learned tonight. If you go and share this information with other people, you'll learn it better yourself, and you may change the direction that someone else's life is going. You could have a profound impact on them. Someone that I'm never going to meet, but you're going to share this information, and that's my way of spreading this and making a greater, a healthier community, to make us have the healthiest community in Vermont. All right, everybody on board with that? All right, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.